Okay, good afternoon to all of our viewers. We are delighted to be with you this afternoon. This is a new program that we are launching. I am Dr. Carson Greene, and welcome to Let's Talk. Let's Talk is designed to provide an opportunity for deep, relevant, and meaningful interaction on topics that are not always discussed, but that affect us all. The South Leeward Conference believes that Christianity is not just about preaching in churches, it is about making a difference. On this program, we will discuss real issues and how the church can address them. We will deal with matters that affect and impact young and old alike. This afternoon, we will begin with something that is close to the heart of all of us, COVID-19. We are currently existing in a state of emergency in these parts, and this has in itself created a challenge for many of us. This afternoon, we will discuss the psychological impact of this deadly pandemic. But before we go any further, before we introduce our special guests, we want to begin with a word of prayer. So I would like to ask all of you who are watching at this time, just to bow your heads and to let's approach the throne of grace. Almighty Father and our God, we pray that you will be with us as we begin, as we launch this program today, Let's Talk. We pray for your wisdom, your guidance. We ask that you will be with all of those who are listening, be with the situation around the world, and we ask for your divine intervention in this deadly pandemic. Take full control and grant us your peace and your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, a viewing audience, we are grateful, delighted to be with you this afternoon. We would like to say a few things before we introduce our special guest. We do hope as we dialogue, as we discuss, that you may have a question or two that you want to ask, and you can simply just on the YouTube chat post your questions there, and we will attend to them. We also would like to welcome those who are viewing from as far as Canada. In fact, wherever in the world you're viewing at this time, we are delighted to have you. Well, this afternoon, as I indicated, we are beginning our discussion with this COVID-19, this situation that has come upon us, a situation that we really did not anticipate, but that we can hardly do anything about. And our special guest today is one Dr. Neals Chitan. He is Grenadian-born, the Grenadian-born founder of, president and a frontline speaker of Motivate for Change International. It's a powerful Toronto-based social skill agency which has ignited a social change revolution across Canada, 5 US states, the United Kingdom, Africa, and from Jamaica to Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. He has touched over 1 million children and impacted many youths and adults alike. He has been a social skill consultant for Toronto District School Board and the Toronto Community Housing Corporation, where he passionately helped individuals discover at least one good trait in themselves, which he uses to create their wings to fly, so to speak. He has also, for the past 20 years, delivered Operation Another Chance. This is a powerful social rehabilitation and reintegration program for young men trapped with the Ontario justice system. As a social scientist, Dr. Chitan holds a PhD in social and behavioral sciences, and he has designed and copyrighted the EDDA approach, a 4-dimensional blueprint for sustainable crime reduction. He's the author of Respect Due, the key to solving crime and violence and pulling the plug, a practical guide to disarming the downward spiral of loss, grief, depression, and death. He's also the designer and copyright holder and facilitator for the internationally recognized High Impact Crime Reduction Series, Project Stop and Think. Those of us in the Caribbean, especially in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, would be very familiar with Dr. Chitan because the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis contracted him to to implement this program. And I am happy to declare that as a result of this program, in 2017, they witnessed a homicide reduction rate of 39%, again in 2018, another 39%, and even lower in 2019. We are just delighted to have Dr. Chitan with us this afternoon. I am happy to report that he is a devout Seventh-day Adventist professional who has worked from the General Conference level down to the local Pathfinder Club. He's married. His wife, Ann Chitan, and himself, they have been married for 34 years. And together they have 4 adult children, and I need to say this, 6 grandchildren likewise. I want to say a special welcome to our special guest this afternoon, Dr. Neals Chitan. Dr. Chitan, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Dr. Greene. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is the first, the launching of your program, and I feel delighted and feel blessed to be asked to be here. Just want to give a quick shout out to my friends from St. Kitts, as you rightly said a while ago. I'm after spending 3 years in St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Kitts and Nevis is part of the South Leeward Conference. So I imagine I have friends looking on. So I'm just saying hi. Patsy sent in her love also. She left me. She's in Toronto, by the way, and she's looking on as we speak. I got my sister, who is also a frontline worker, one of the nurses there, looking on, and a lot of folks from Toronto. So it's my delight, and I hope this evening we can make some sense out of what's happening.
Okay, wonderful. Dr. Chitan, you recently published an article that I came across, and I want to make reference to it just now. It's called "The COVID-19 Monster Breeds More Monsters." I believe you were writing for Spicelander.com. Spicelander.com deals with Caribbean news, sports, etc. This is a very provocative article, and perhaps we can talk about some of the things we discussed there. We're discussing the psychological impact of COVID-19. Before we do that, however, the folks in St. Kitts Nevis say they miss you. And just tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're doing right now.
Right now, after finishing my contract in St. Kitts and Nevis, of course, Grenada is our homeland, Patsy and myself, and we left a long time, of course, 37 years, and I went out there. But while working in St. Kitts and Nevis, we came back for Christmas, of course, in Grenada, and the government here heard about what we were doing and asked us if we would consider coming home to do a similar work when we were finishing St. Kitts and Nevis. So right now, I am in Grenada, and Patsy's supposed to be here with me because, of course, you know that she is my admin secretary, but of course, she had to go out to Toronto to be with our grandchildren, our granddaughters, because the mom, our daughter, was having a minor surgery. And of course, the closing of the borders trapped her there. So that's what we're doing here, a similar thing in Grenada, something that we love doing, and hopefully we'll have some kind of an impact.
Okay, very well. So Doc, this COVID-19, you know, most people, I believe, before this state of emergency that so many of us find ourselves in, would have said things like, I long for the day when I don't have to go to work, when I can just stay home and sleep all the time.
Yeah.
Now we see the opposite happening. Folks are at home, they have every opportunity to sleep all the time, but they're bored, they're being affected. And one perhaps did not realize that a lockdown would have impacted people like this.
Well, you know, the thing about it, Doc, we would have never thought we would have seen the day when the whole world would have stopped. COVID-19 crept up on us, as I called it in the article, like a monster. You know, and as I said in the article, there were so many other symbolism we could have used to describe it. And I've heard people referring to as a plague, as a blight. But I like the term monster because, you know, he has a sneaky way about it, this frightening way about it. And it actually brought the world to a halt. Workplaces, schools, grocery stores, churches, if you please. And so it has we have to now look at, although folks would have been saying, man, I can't wait for vacation time when I could be off work, you know. But now it's like, oh my goodness, when would work start again to go back? Because of course they're dealing with the ramifications, the social ramifications of a prolonged vacation. You know?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, that you realize that now you're home, that your movement is being regulated, your freedom, so to speak, has been taken away from you. And one of the areas that I think is most challenging to especially Caribbean people is the fact that we can't greet and hug and squeeze each other like we used to. So this thing is really creating a challenge. Now, from a psychological perspective, can you just share some of the challenges, the challenges that this lockdown has created, and so subtle, and that people perhaps don't even realize that they've been affected?
Right, and I'll try to, during the discourse of this discussion, I'll try to be anecdotal as possible, referencing some of the real issues that I'm dealing with here. You know, as I said in the article, Pastor, there are two groups of people. And just happened that the second group I'm going to talk about is in the majority. We have the fully functional home, and we have the somewhat dysfunctional home. The functional home, where we have parents and children being able to cooperate, where there is a family plan, where we are working towards something. Children know they're going to school to achieve something because within a family plan, they may worship together, they may plan for the future, they may plan for vacations, they may plan all kind of stuff. And so that's a kind of functional home. Then, of course, you have the somewhat dysfunctional home, where people at loggerheads, where people just can't stand each other too much. You may have a controlling husband or boyfriend, because I got to be real, we would prefer to say boyfriend, but I'm working out there husband. We prefer to say husband, but the reality is that it's boyfriend sometimes. And you have a controlling guy, or you have a perceived, and I want to be careful here, a perceived nagging woman that you're working with. And you have a couple of children, and home is not great. You know, the man has been ridiculed because he's not playing his role. You don't have the spirit of cooperation. And so what we find in many cases is that these folks, as I mentioned in the article, they may, because they're not totally enjoying, home is not a place of bliss, of happiness, where you just can't wait to go. It's a place where you say, wow, man, I prefer hanging out with my friends. So what I call extracurricular activity, after work probably, they would hang out by a bar, or they would hang out in a sports club, or they go to a ball game, and there they stay because they're really trying to get away. It's a kind of a getaway mechanism. In many cases, that getaway mechanism might be a bar where they self-medicate with alcohol or whatever it is. And they may hang out there until later because I just don't want to go home. It's not a place I really enjoy. I got to tolerate it because that's my children. That's the woman I'm in a relationship with, but I really don't want to go home. So they hang out there and they go semi-inebriated or probably fully inebriated, walk home, go home, and just crash in bed to start the process over tomorrow again. And that's how life is in this dysfunctional home. Well, guess what? Now that the COVID monster has landed and the governments are putting regulations in place, social distancing, isolation, curfews, like in Grenada here, 24-hour curfew, lockdown, and no church, no shops, no stores. With the lady, I said sports bars for the gentlemen, for the ladies, sometimes they too are having a problem coping. And so what they would do as extracurricular activity, they will go to the mall, they will go to the big S word, shopping with their friends. But all this is now closed, and now you are locked in within the walls of a home with that rough, disrespectful man or this nagging woman, and you're locked in there for 24/7. You can't even get the alcohol that you probably were self-medicating with. And so you're in that. And by the way, as I'm talking to you here, Pastor, I'm talking about real situations that I've seen. this is not, I'm not theorizing. We're dealing with it on a daily basis. And it drives folks crazy. A matter of fact, within 1 week time in Grenada here, we had two suicides. Men, by the way, taking their lives 100 feet away from each other in the same village. All right, one hung himself, the other one drank Gramazone, which is it's a pest control, it's a harsh pest control chemical, and he drank it because, of course, you have the tension building, and there is no getaway. So it's a perfect recipe, Pastor, for things like domestic violence. Because people don't know how to deal with it. They cannot get the help they need. I mean, right now, most islands are trying to put psychosocial help in place, but within the first 2 weeks or so, people had to navigate these issues themselves. And they are stuck there. You have children, you have students that can't go to school.
Before we talk about the children, because that's another dimension that we want to explore. But let's go back to the situation where in this home, whether these individuals are Christians or non-Christians, whether they're oriented to God or not, the reality is that a lot of times we see things on the surface, as you indicated so clearly. You may have had a situation where work provided an escape route for somebody. After work they would hang out, etc. But now that they can't do any of that, they are in the home, and some of these things lead to domestic violence. So if you are trapped in that situation, what a lady who is listening, who finds herself in that situation, what can you say to her? How does she cope under the circumstances?
First of all, most of the islands that I'm interfacing with right now are setting up helplines. And it's important that we access these helplines. I mean, I know as Caribbean people, one of the problems we face is seeking help, seeking some kind of a counseling. We don't like that word counseling, I guess because of the confidentiality. And not only that, we don't want to put our laundry out there. But with the tension building inside, a person who is not well doesn't have the coping mechanism. The man, and most time in domestic violence, of course, ladies violate or men too, but most times it's the male that's doing the violating. Most times, I'm not saying all times, he's a stronger guy, he's a bigger guy, and he could take advantage. And so lady, if you're going through that, don't take it lightly. A lot of people would say, you know what, it was only one time, and because in domestic violence, Pastor, there is something called the honeymoon period, right? Where a domestic violator knows that he violated his partner, sees the pain on the face, see the hurt, and what that individual will do is a sweet talk, as we say in the Caribbean, or say, okay, I'm going to cook for you, or I'm going to do something for you to create a honeymoon situation. And once the honeymoon situation comes back, guess what? It pacifies her, and then she waits for the next episode. With no treatment, the next episode is almost guaranteed once that tension builds. So I would say to a lady, or a gentleman, by the way, or a gentleman, if you see that the tension is rising, you know your spouse. And by the way, I've seen it a lot, even within the Christian community. You know you have a hot-tempered spouse. You know that this is a jealous man. You know that. Once you see the temperature rising, seek help. I cannot tell you leave, because to tell you leave is tell you to violate the curfew. But I'm saying there are a lot of, I'm so proud of the Grenada Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. I was just speaking to President Clinton Lewis yesterday, and he told me that they have a psychosocial unit in place, and they make regular calls to the members and ask the members if they could refer their families and relatives that are not Seventh-day Adventists to them so they could help. In Grenada, we've just set up the psychosocial unit, And I've been asked, by the way, I've been blessed to be asked to serve as an advisor there. So we are trying to create the awareness and making lines available. Some of us, like a first responder, and we would get up and run. Despite the curfew, I would like this morning. I was planning on on worshiping with you, but a call came, and we had to respond. So to answer your question, if lady out there or gentleman out there, if you realize that you see temperature rising, you see anger building, it's getting hot in, as we say, it's getting hot in here. Don't wait for it to burst. Call the helplines, because that may be your only guarantee or help.
Very well. I used to say to church members that when you find you're in those kinds of situations, it is important, as you're saying, to make it known. In the church, there is a semi-structure that we have. By the way, in South Leeward, we are also providing psychological help. In fact, we have reached out to the government and told them that we do have pastors who are qualified counselors, and they can assist. And right now we are in that stage of providing assistance in that regard. But there is another simple thing I want to mention that church members can do, because we do have right now technology to our advantage.
That's correct.
You should have a network of friends, and perhaps you could say more about this, because the matter of having somebody to talk to, even in the state of emergency, is so important. To be able to reach out. We cannot hug and squeeze each other now, but we can virtually connect with friends, with families, etc. It's important to create that environment where there can be emotional release.
Yeah, and I'm Pastor. When the pandemic just hit the Caribbean or North America, wherever it is, the term was social distancing. You've noticed that it's changed out to physical distancing, because you don't want to socially distance people. We are social beings. We need to reach out. We need to reach out by any means necessary. And we may not be able to hug physically, but we could connect virtually. I mean, right now we are connecting virtually. And so you may be able to use your media platform, whichever you choose, to encode a message. I mean, I'm sitting here on my desk, and I'm perusing all the social media platforms, and I'm looking for red flags. I'm looking for every little indication I get to respond. So there are people out there who are looking for indicators. So that's, again, that's a powerful thing. Use your social media and give an indication. You may not want to say exactly what happened. Don't be too explicit or blatant on social media, but at least give an indication. Reach out to someone who could actually strengthen you from inside, your emotions, mentally, and of course, reach out to your pastors, reach out to your shepherds. They would, and the good thing about it, Pastor Doc, what I've noticed is that a lot of our pastors are doing the masters in counseling and that kind of stuff, which is a great thing. Right. They're bringing another skill to their profession, which is really, really good. So they also could be of use there.
Well, friends, if you're just joining us, we are on Let's Talk, and we're talking to Dr. Neals Chitan, International Social Skills Consultant. Dr. Chitan is sharing with us how we can respond positively to the challenge of the COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19. Now, Doc, you mentioned in that article I referred to earlier that there is some impact on children as well, and there can be a challenge not just between husbands and wives or boyfriends and girlfriends, in that what we refer to in Antigua as common law relationship. But you may also have some teenage children who look forward to getting home from school, going out playing, running, etc. They're in that stage of development where they do not want to take parental authority, etc. But now they're home. They can't escape. And that can create a lot of tension. And some parents can't handle that quite well.
Yeah. And the thing about it, they are, it most frequently happen with teenagers, of course. So that would be high school students. Of course, it sometimes happens as low down as the grade 6s and grade 5s too, based on the parenting style, based on what kind of a nurturing they got. But you know, when teenagers hit the teenage years, it's when they're trying to assert themselves. They're moving from independence to interdependence, hopefully into full dependence or independence one day. And so it's a time when teenagers question the rules. They don't necessarily like the rules. And by the way, parents, I want you to remember that you were teenagers too, and there were times when you didn't like the rules also, right? I remember when I didn't like the rules either. Of course, in my case, because I grew up under the iron curtain of Adventism, if I didn't obey the rules, then I would feel the rules, right? But of course, at that point in time, when the children are trying to assert themselves, when the peers mean so much to them, when they are looking for peer groups and they're gravitating towards people with similar characteristics or similar likes, and that's so important for them. So much that after school, they would even sneak away. Although mom and dad say, listen, after school, make sure you come home, right? But with mom and dad seeing what happening out there and how violent the world is coming, they are scared, of course. And they say, come on, honey, make sure you come home. Come home and report first. But of course, they're with their friends. And which one of us don't remember that? And so they want to go hang out to the malls. They want to go, say they go into the library sometimes, even if they don't come home with a book or they don't reach the library. But they want to gravitate with their friends. And now, because of course they may not like the rules home, they may not like the chores, that it's your time to wash the dishes or whatever it is, whatever the case is. And I'm really trying to get away from that. But now you are not just told to go home, but you are enforced. And that word enforced, Pastor, is a tough word, you know. Because within the word enforce is the word force. If you don't go voluntarily, we are going to force you in, right? And so you have in many states, many islands, Grenada, for example, with a state of emergency, it has now become sometimes a police state where the police run the streets. And if you're found outside, you are forced in or arrested, right? So they are forced to go inside. And what happens when they go inside? Well, I don't want to be here. I want to be out with my friends. And so the attitudes start. They not cooperating, not doing the chores, not, you know, they want to be spoken to. And so it's the perfect recipe for child abuse. But as I said in the article, Pastor, turn the other way, parental abuse. Because sometimes children even push the button and get violent with parents, rude and violent with parents, especially when you have single parents and you have a big boy who may be phenotypically bigger than his mother, or a girl bigger than a mom, and they haven't achieved the level of maturity here. The phenotypical maturity fools them into believing that they're adults. And so they go up against the parents and do the ungodly. So it is the perfect recipe, if not well handled. And, you know, again, that's where all that we spoke about before, counselors and helplines and pastors and stuff come in. Parents, if that's your situation, reach out to the various media that we spoke about, and the counselors, reach out to your pastor, reach out to your AY leader, and see if you could seek some help.
Now we are at our halfway mark.
Yeah.
Time is moving quickly. We do need to say to those who are listening, those who are watching, that if you do have a question that you want to ask, you can post your question in the YouTube chat, and we would be happy to respond to you. In the meantime, Dr. Chitan, we want to look at another element of this COVID-19 impact, and that is one that people are always very uncomfortable dealing with, and that's the matter of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I say grief, people immediately think of death. Now, a lot of that is happening, but there is more than that, because there are individuals who are losing not just loved ones, but individuals are losing their job, they're losing income, they're losing control of their freedom, etc. So let's talk about grief a little bit, and how this is impacting people, because some people may not even realize this is what is happening to them.
Yes. Grief is a natural response to loss. To loss. And as you say, most time when we think about grief, we think we attribute it to death. Well, it is the toughest one to deal with. That's death. But of course, there are a lot of other areas of loss. In my book, pulling the plug, by the way, I spoke about that. The different kind of losses. I spoke about 3 different losses there. One, the progressive loss, and of course, progressive loss is when you would have seen a parent that's getting old and dying, losing their senses and stuff, and you know that this is a progression. Or in the workplace, you heard that they're cutting staff and they're trimming down your staff, and you can almost see the hand right on the wall that sooner or later your job will be cut. That's progressive. You are getting ready for it. Then we have unanticipated. Unanticipated is that where, as I said in the book, where your blue skies become a dark cloud and just a heavy overcast. And not only that, the rain falls on you and drenches you to the bone. That's unanticipated. You're not ready for it. Plans were going good. Everything was going great. And then everything is derailed. And then, of course, the third kind of a grief I talk about in the book is compounded loss. Compounded loss, which is a series of back-to-back losses that doesn't give you a chance to recuperate. But everyone just push you further and further. That compounded loss is really meant to kill you if not handled well. So we have a loss as human beings in all different spheres, not just death. But of course, COVID-19 has actually brought in a kind of loss that is very traumatic and dramatic. And I spoke about it in that article because, Pastor, one of the things that we have to deal with our Caribbean people, because most of us in the Caribbean, we have family members, dads, moms, siblings, children in North America, United Kingdom. It did not dawn on us that one day we are going to lose them tragically or so quickly, not getting ready to deal with it. In the Caribbean, even if I lived out in Canada for 37 years, it was still in my thinking that when I die, I would like my body to come to Grenada and be buried in the land of my birth. And that is a lot of people, they're thinking. But here it is that COVID-19, the monster came in, and we just shared. Grenada, we are counting. I think we're up to 70 Grenadians that have died in North America or the United Kingdom, and I have had to deal with it. I've had to do with families. A beautiful young girl here whose mother is in the States. She was planning to come home on vacation. So the eager anticipation of reconnecting, the fun we are going to have, and then all of a sudden get a call that your mother has contracted the virus. And not only that, before you could process that and pray for her well-being, you get another call that your mother has died, dying lonely, no closure. And Doc, that's the thing about funerals. Funerals are designed in such a way to bring some form of closure. I refer to the first news as the breaking news. So when you get a phone call that, oh my gosh, the phone call you didn't want, and then you have to process that, come to terms with it, and you move from there, and different other closure. You go to the funeral home to make the arrangements, and you probably see the body, and then it comes to reality that, oh, it is true. And then other things, the visitation. Some people want to even put the tie on or the jacket on, in the casket. All these are meant to be the process of grieving, of closure. And then, of course, come to the funeral day when we all scream and we cry and we faint, but we look at the grave as it being closed, as the dirt goes in and slowly close, and it's a way of closure. But all that is robbed from us, and we just have to deal with it, face the cruel reality that we will never, ever get to see that individual again. So it's something that's going to bring in some kind of a residual, long-lasting grief. depression, if you please.
Doc, I've had several cases where I've had to deal with this situation. Individuals who have lost loved ones, and suddenly and unexpectedly, as you said, and then they realize that somehow they're not allowed to go to a funeral.
Mm,
They can't. People cannot travel anymore. The other day I did a funeral, and the father died, and the daughter and mother at the graveside, but there is another daughter who could not come to the funeral because she's
mhm.
outside of Antigua. And that kind of situation is, in fact, here in Antigua, they tell us that the funerals are limited to only
10.
10 persons.
Yeah, here too.
You
Yeah.
know, only 10. You cannot go to the church, you go straight to the
Graveside.
graveyard and
Yeah.
you bury the dead. So lots of people are being affected in this way. And I want to ask you, Doc, because one of the things we are hoping to be able to do, apart from sensitizing people to the reality of what's going on, and folks may not be coping too well, we have individual ways that sometimes we tell ourselves we're dealing with this. And when we don't stop to grieve properly, it impacts us later on. So how is there anything at all that somebody who finds himself or herself in a situation like this? But in fact, recently I had a case where one lady lost her mother, and in a space of another week, she lost her father. She
Yeah.
could go
Yeah.
to neither funerals. So,
Mm.
so what coping mechanisms can these individuals employ? I know some people try to do a hotline and at least try to stream the funeral service so that
Yes.
loved ones can participate. But is there anything else that people can do?
No, Pastor, there are some certain losses that the human being, God has wired us in such a way that sometimes our coping mechanism and our survival skills would give us the coping mechanism to rise. And many times people are able to rise by themselves, but this is so traumatic that I always suggest, and Pastor Doc, as we speak right now, I got 3 families here dealing with that I have to be on the line with constantly, because the emotions are moving up and down. You know, you speak to them and you reach out to them, and it's a good feeling. It's great now. It's great now. The inspiration is good. The techniques and the strategies you give them, it's good. But then all of a sudden, you know, one of the things that's going to really be hard, Pastor, is, and I think it's chapter 7 of my book. It's called "Watch for the Night." The night is a dread time. You see, the daytime, when the sunshine is here, the vitamin D is kicking, and the rays of the sun is here, even if you're by yourself, it's still a kind of a, it's a lustrous time, you know. But when evening time comes, and Pastor, the truth about it, listen to this, I haven't lost anybody in that kind of way. My wife is in Toronto, and when evening time comes, I'm by myself here. And I too feel a little alone when evening time comes. So there's something about evening time when you're winding down, and the night time could be a really, really depressing time. And so in chapter 8 of the book, I say 7 is called Watch for the Night. That's the NIGHT. And then chapter 8 is called Watch for the KNIGHT, the night. And the night there refers to someone who will rescue you from the trouble of the night. So what can we do? When you are drowning in your distress, in your depression, in your misery, you need someone, something to rescue you. In the book, I said, you know what? It could be a counselor. It could be a friend that you could reach out to. It could be a song. And from our perspective, clinical perspective, we recommend music therapy as one of the great things that soothe the soul. So music therapy, humor therapy. I use humor therapy. As a matter of fact, there is a great Christian comedian, Michael J. I think it's called. Really good, clean Christian comedy. And sometimes you put on something that could lift your spirit. Because the thing about it, Pastor, it would not be an overnight change. There is no magic bullet. There is no medication I could give you to tell you, well, this is going to change your reality right away and the grief would stop. It's basically you have to keep propped up, supported. And the day the support system leaves you, you are prone to fall back down. So we have to figure out, you have to figure out what's your NIGHTS, your KNIGHTS, that will rescue you. As I said, humor, music, a good sermon, a counselor, 3ABN, I don't know. But all in all, please get professional help. And that's what I'm doing with that young lady right now. I'm leading her through a process. She didn't see her mother buried, but I'm leading her through a process of memorializing her mother within her own life.
Now we do have a few questions here that we want to look at.
Sure.
So before our time goes, first question, what about the small children between ages 5 to 12 who, how do you think the COVID-19 lockdown is affecting them? How do we reach out to them? So somebody's asking about the small children and how can we?
Yeah, well, the truth about it is that I feel it more for the small children because they go into the active stage, you know, when they're so physical. You put them in a daycare or you put them in grade school, oh boy, they'll be running up and down the place. I mean, if that was Neals Chitan, that was my thing, run across the class. And I would have then be labeled ADHD. So I understand the energy outburst, and it would be particularly hard for them. And that's where parents would have to become ingenious and create active. Well, the truth about it is that I don't know what's happening in Antigua and the South Leeward, South Leeward territory, but I know in Grenada here, the Ministry of Education has everything online with videos and movies and puzzles that they could do, right? But apart from that, because we are very gadget oriented, mom and dad, it just simply mean that you would have to now spend a lot of the time that you have, because they used to be away from you and you got a break when they were in daycare or when they were in school. Now you got them 24/7, right? So the question is, what can you do? What to play stakes and ladders, for example, to find some kind of a competition within the house with a reward to keep them active, so that they could burn their energy. Because if they don't burn their energy gainfully, trust me, they are going to use their energy in a negative way, and it may not turn out the way, very mischievously, and may not turn to get the results that you want.
Well, another question here, Doc, and this one is an interesting one. Please share your views on how families can cope with persons who are battling addictions. I imagine it must be hard to be locked in with an addict who cannot feel their addictions, or feed, rather, who can't feed the addiction.
Yeah.
So that one seems to be quite a challenge, because you know, if I'm accustomed to the alcohol per se, and now I am locked away from that because I don't have the freedom to go out and get it, or whatever the case may be. So that's a challenge. The person is asking to share some thoughts.
And I want to put two spins on that. Because of course, with an addict in your house that is compelled, you know, towards a substance or towards some kind of a habit or some kind of routine that has become addictive, and lockdown, I cannot feed that addiction, withdrawal symptoms are going to set in. Right? If it's a substance addiction, some withdrawal symptoms could be physiological. and could actually cause that addict to become ill because of, and I could think about harsher drugs and even alcohol. The withdrawal symptoms of alcohol could even be physiological, make the individual sick. And so that would create an added challenge in your house. Again, you would need to tap into help, get as much help as possible. Oh, by the way, not because I am in the social arena, I have not yet mentioned, and Pastor, we have not mentioned prayer, because sometimes we use prayer as just pray about it. We are giving you techniques and we are giving you concepts, but at the same time, we don't want to downplay the power of God and prayer. So please make sure you ask God to help you here. But there are things we have to do. And with an addict, it could be one or two things, because now that the addict cannot get his or her craving or to fulfill the addiction, that person could go haywire. That could be the recipe for, again, violent confrontation, disrespectful confrontation. However, there's another spin on the addict thing, and that is when I'm working with addiction in North America. One of the things I want to do is to do a detoxification. And there are two ways of doing detoxification. Chemical intervention, or two, natural detoxification, where you take the person away from the substance long enough that the body would wean itself off the chemical, right? And what could be the blessing of this? The blessing of this could be that there could be a natural, if we could handle and support that addict, there could be a natural detoxification as the person is locked down, because they're enforced, and addicts always need enforcing. They cannot deal with it themselves, so the enforcing. Well, here they are enforced. So apart from the quarrels and the violence that could happen, there could be a blessing. There could be an awful blessing, as I say, right? Because if it's handled well and you get professional help, you get counselors and what have you to help the addict, it could actually be a new beginning as the bloodstream wean itself from that craving, and we could actually use that situation to create brand new routines.
That's right. Well, before we ask the next question, I want to remind those who are viewing that you can, if you do have a question, post it in the YouTube chat, and we will seek to get to you. Our time is almost up. We are almost out of time. We stop at 4 o'clock. There is another program coming up this afternoon at 4:30. The AYs are having a very impressive joint AY program, so that all of the young people from across South Leeward Conference, you will tune into our YouTube channel right here, and they're going to be talking about walking with God. That's interesting. Now, there is another question here that I want you to give some attention to. This is going back to the whole matter of those children, again, in school this time. They are now not able to go out, interact with their classmates, run, play, exercise, etc. So this person is asking what kind of psychological support can be given to school students that are locked down and still have to deal with the bulk of the schoolwork. It's home, it's coming in piles because it's online. I find that for the past a month and a half or so since we have been confined to home, that work has increased significantly. So for the children, perhaps that's the same. How do they cope? What can we say to them?
Yeah, and again, Pastor, the truth about it, there are only two sources of help, because as we say, the school boards putting in place a lot of activities that would help children deal with the psychological impact. But parents, again, I have to use the word ingenious and creative. You have to move from your conscious to your creative subconscious and realize that, because it is going to have an impact. As a matter of fact, Pastor, when school reopens, there'll be a lot of situations. I've seen from working with the Toronto District School Board. I've noticed that every time children, young ones, are isolated because of behavioral problems, when they re-emerge, there's a lot of hitting, touching, fighting, right? So I envision a lot of that's going to happen, and so it is important that parents. I'm glad. I was going to comment on South Leeward. I think you guys did an amazing job, and I'm finding myself tuning into South Leeward quite a bit because I saw the puppet show today, right? And these things we could use, media we could use to get these messages to help children deal. And the puppets, that's something that would grab the fantasy, grab the minds. And it doesn't have to be an adult coming and teach them that, but I really like what you guys are doing. And you could use that medium, to deal with some of the psychological things that children would face. That's a good thing about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We have so many top professionals, top-notch teachers and counselors. And so you have to go in your bag, go in your toolkits and get creating things that are specific towards that age range.
There are some benefits to this COVID-19, some positive benefits. And I think one of the things parents can do is to try to utilize the positives. Many parents are at home and their children at home, and before COVID-19, before the lockdown, you did not have enough time to interact with them. Now, if you do have yard space, you can be outside playing with your children, running with your children. It is providing meaningful recreation for you, for your children. The whole matter of bonding in meaningful ways. When I was a child, before we had television and that kind of fancy stuff, we used to sit at night and tell stories.
Yes.
We would roast corn and
yes.
we would play games. And so these days, perhaps we need to stop and reflect and take a journey backwards and engage our families so that bonding can be there. Because if that is not there, that brings us to perhaps maybe the final question for this afternoon, because somebody is asking here. Well, we probably will deal with two, but somebody's asking. I guess this person tuned in a little late, but still, how do persons respond in homes where there is an abuser? There is no option to walk away because of the curfews. We did mention that briefly, but for the benefit of those who are joining.
Yeah, and Pastor, let me quickly use an opportunity to talk about sexual abuse. Because what we notice in Grenada here, we do not have the reporting of a lot of sexual abuse cases. And because you understand that most of the time, a young girl is abused because a parent is out of the house. So a stepfather or father might be in the house, or some other person might be in the house, and there's nobody, no adults with them. So it's easy to take advantage because the whole family is there. Mom is there, dad is there. We see a drop in sexual abuse. But the answer to the question, of course, we answered it before. If you see any form of abuse, we've given the roots, and if you tune in late, you might have missed the roots. But we said that the lockdown it's a perfect recipe for abuse, for violence, and for crime, and what have you. But we would need. My suggestion, as I say, make use of the helplines, the hotlines, the counselors, the pastors, the teachers. Make use of social media. Indicate to someone that you trust what might be happening, so that somebody could intervene.
Just for general information, Dr. Mark Brathwaite and myself, we have a program on Second Advent Radio called Marriage Encounter. And for the last 2 weeks, going into 3 weeks now, we have chosen to deal with this whole concept of some of the spin-offs of COVID-19. One of the things that has come to our attention, and one of the reasons why some young people even are becoming suicidal is that because now everybody's locked down, the whole matter of incest is on the increase. We don't have all the time to dissect that this afternoon, but that is another area that one needs to be concerned about. Doc, I do believe that our time has expired. There are a few more questions. Maybe we can get in just one more. But I do want to just say a word on the parent who has 3 children. She's not accustomed to supervising children, doing schoolwork with them. She has 1 computer in the house and they all have to use the instrument to do their online programs. She's not coping well. What do we say to her?
That's a tough one, because of course once I mean, we know how it's like, the gadget fight, and that in itself could bring in all kinds of battery and fights among the children. Not only that, that parent may not even be able to help the children. They may or may not have the academic fortitude to help the children. And 3 children, it could be very overwhelming. Very overwhelming. You may have to reach out for help from family members, right? Once you know that they don't carry they don't carry the virus, and they could come and live with you within where you live, you may have to cry for help and get cousins or friends or siblings to come and help, because that could pose a situation that could drive you haywire and could even cause you to lose your sanity. So I mean, I would say reach out.
Well, Dr. Chitan, it was such a joy talking with you this afternoon, and how quickly 1 hour passes.
Yeah.
We will have to get you on another episode sometime else, and I'm sure that you would be willing to come back. There is another area that we did not touch at all, and that's the whole matter of violence. But have no fear. Next week, our special guest for next week's presentation, dealing with the whole matter of community violence, gangs, etc., is the renowned Dr. Clive Dutton out of Trinidad.
Oh, beautiful.
We're going to be discussing that because there are some aspects of that relating to COVID-19 that people need to be aware of, and what the church is doing and how we can react. So next week at 3 p.m., we will be on. Our special guest is going to be Dr. Clive Dutton, and we're going to be talking about community violence and how the church is responding to that. In the meantime, I want to remind our viewers that in half an hour's time, the South Leeward Conference Youth Society will be having a joint AY program. We're going to be there, not we, but they're going to be right back here on YouTube and on Facebook. So take a break, drink some water, stretch your legs, go outside, get some fresh air. And then at 4:30, the young people have an amazing program. They're going to be talking about walking with God. And I am excited about it. I know that there's going to be an amazing panel discussion. There's a young lady from St. Kitts who's going to be chairing the panel discussion, and I'm just so impressed with this young lady. But that's for the AY program coming up at 4:30. It was a pleasure again, Dr. Chitan, talking with you this afternoon. I'll give you the opportunity to say a final shout out to your friends, especially in St. Kitts Nevis, before we go.
Yeah, St. Kitts and Nevis was good. It was good being back in South Leeward conference. We had a wonderful time there, and I'm dreaming of a time when COVID-19 would pass by and I could come back to St. Kitts and Nevis to have a little fun with you guys. God bless you guys. Stay strong. And just in case the Lord shows up soon, be prepared, because I'm going.
Amen,
God bless you.
Let's end with prayer. Almighty Father, we give you thanks for what we're able to share today. We thank you for Dr. Chitan and his willingness to share with us of his expertise, his skills, his knowledge. We pray that you will be with all of our viewers, be with our territory, continue to strengthen us as we seek to cope. May your hand lead us and guide us. Take full control and have your own way. And then, Lord, in a few minutes' time, in half an hour's time, when the young people come on, we pray that you will guide and help, that all will go well as well. Take full control of us and grant us your peace and your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all for
God bless you. Okay.
The privilege and opportunity to share with you. Let's Talk will be back here next week at 3 p.m. And our special guest is going to be Dr. Clive Dutton. God bless
All
you.
right. God bless.